This Jeffrey Epstein list, aka unsealed court documents, been released. The internet is going crazy about it. We're going to look a little bit about it, see the practical implication. The Jeffrey Epstein thing is a really interesting saga, to say the least, because it confirms a lot of the stuff we know about people who have immense access to excess and puts concrete evidence to it. Now, it's also very bizarre in terms of the way he went out, saying he would never go out the way he went out and then went out the way he went out. I can't say the word. You guys know what the word means, right? So let's take a look at this clip from AP and we'll do a little bit of research here. Unsealed court documents released.
Some of the documents that were released involved depositions that were given by Jeffrey Epstein's accusers, Jeffrey Epstein's victims. And they talked about mostly what had been reported on or rumored about people like Bill Clinton. These women were asked if they had ever been on a helicopter with Bill Clinton. They denied that. Much of the information that we've seen.
From my understanding, the quotes about Bill Clinton were things these victims who were a part of the original lawsuit against Epstein from years ago. One of them was a minor and said she had been with Prince Andrew, had heard Epstein say about Bill Clinton. They didn't hear it from Bill Clinton. They didn't interact with Bill Clinton themselves. They heard it. They heard Epstein say things about Bill Clinton. And one of the things is that apparently Bill Clinton likes him young. Now, I don't mean to be this guy, but was anyone surprised by any of this? I'm just saying, was anyone surprised by any of this? The Clintons have had a pretty dark reputation for decades. A lot of people who were close to them, I can't say it, but you get what I'm getting. So, this isn't surprising to me at all. If they heard Jeffrey Epstein say that, no surprise.
Seen in this document release today is stuff that we've already known for the most part. Right. Names like former President Bill Clinton, Prince Andrew, even the mention of Michael Jackson came out through a lawyer several years ago. Today's release shed some new light on that. Nothing untoward happened with Michael Jackson, according to the witness who was testifying. But it is.
We knew about the Prince Andrew thing. That was verified. I believe he settled with with his accusers.
Not the explosive release of documents that some people were anticipating. One woman said that she was flying on Jeffrey Epstein's private jet from Florida to New York. They had to divert because of bad weather in Atlantic City, and they wound up at one of Donald Trump's casinos. Jeffrey Epstein, according to this woman, said, "Oh, great, we're in Atlantic City. We'll call up Trump and go to the casino." Now, it is not clear, and this woman was not asked if she actually met Donald Trump, if they met up with him that night.
Why would you not ask her that? See, that's a L on whoever was doing these investigations. Because listen, I think all these folks are crooks and corrupt. If you ask me, left, right, center, I think they're all pretty deplorable in terms of that immense access to excess. Without Jesus, come on, fam. And so I wish they would have asked. So did you end up meeting Trump? What was that like? Well, how connected was he in this? But we can't act. Those are Team MAGA. Y'all can't act like Trump wasn't also on this list. All right, his name was in the mix too. All this is hearsay at the end of the day, but his name was in the mix.
Later in that same testimony, she was asked if she had ever been asked to give a massage to Donald Trump, as she had been doing for Jeffrey Epstein, and she says no, that was not the case. There was a great deal.
So it sounds like there's arguments from silence for both Epstein, for both Clinton and Trump here. Okay, so you could either take that as W's or you could take that as L's. It's your choice.
Of hype, a great deal of anticipation in this document release. And so far, the word of caution is don't believe the hype.
So let's see if the AP says anything else. The release of dozens of previously sealed court documents, lawsuit involving Jeffrey Epstein might disappoint online, sleuths who anticipate explosive new information. The roughly 60 documents released as of Thursday largely mention figures whose names were already known, including high-profile friends of Epstein's victims who have been spoken publicly. In fact, the judge who made the call to release the information said she was doing so largely because much of it is already public. The plan to released documents prompted rumors that they contain a list of clients or co-conspirators. Misinformation about their content is continuing to run rampant on social media. Still, the record to include some fresh details about the financiers' abuse of teen girls and offer a reminder how he leveraged his powerful connections to recruit his victims and help cover up his crimes. This man was obviously sick. But here is a passage I want to share with you guys. This is a passage that maybe you guys have heard, maybe you guys haven't heard. Okay, this is 1 John 2:16. Okay, and it says, "For everything in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life comes not from the Father, but from the world." Okay, so I want you to think about this. Lust of the eyes, lust of the flesh, pride of life comes not from the Father, but from the world. And this is how I would think about it, is that sin is pervasive. It's like a cancer. It infiltrates people's from the inside out. And then it infiltrates the world, the systems of the world, so on and so forth, right? Now, Jesus has a desire and a heart for people, his people. And so he decides to do something by going into the world and dealing with this issue of sin, by living in this world and dying in this world and rising, conquering death, demons, all that good stuff, right? Now, that doesn't mean that the world doesn't still have lust of the eyes, lust of the flesh, pride of life. And those things don't come from the Father. Evil, it does not come from God. Evil is oftentimes is pervasive in places where God isn't in the mix. And I think what we forget sometimes is that left on our own devices without Jesus, most people are going to drift into debaucherous stuff. Most people are going to drift into things that are promoting the lust of the eyes, lust of the flesh, pride of life. The only difference, and hear me loud and clear, and this is not to try and soften this blow in the least. This is not to say that this is in the least justified, but the only difference between whoever was on Epstein's island and whoever was with little girls or teenagers, the only difference here, hear me loud and clear, between them and a lot of us is Jesus and access. That's it, right? So you can look down your nose and be like, oh man, Bill Clinton's a bad guy or Trump's a bad guy or whatever, right? And I would be like, yeah, for sure. But sometimes they say you're only as faithful as your choices, right? You're only as faithful as your choices. And so if you don't have access and you're not participating in debauchery, well, what are you really doing? Right. And then I go, well, what does your private life look like? What does your web browser look like? What does your private browser look like? Right. Because just because you aren't doing the things that these folks were doing, that doesn't mean that you're any better of a sinner. Like, that's a really dumb way of looking at it. It just means that you probably didn't have the access. And so it's really easy to create this us versus them. They're bad. They're in a cabal. They did all these terrible things. But, man, but for the grace of God, there go a lot of us. But for the grace of God, and sometimes the grace of God not giving you the access to become president or to have immense power or to have immense wealth, that could be a lot of us doing some wild stuff. Right? Now, again, I'm not trying to normalize this sort of deviant behavior. I'm not saying this is normal or this is like the way God intended it. I'm just saying I think we underestimate our own depravity, and pointing out people's sins makes us feel better because we're not as depraved. But a lot of times the only difference is they just had access and you didn't. A lot of times the difference is they had access and you didn't. And you had Jesus and they didn't. Right? And so it's like those two things right there, like the grace of Jesus changing your heart if you're a follower of Jesus, and the grace of, hear me like that, the grace of God not giving you some of the things you pray for, not giving you some of the money you wish you had, not giving you some of the status you wish you had. You know that could be a grace too. God's like, no, I'm not going to let you have that. Nope, you can't handle that yet. Nope, you're not going to have that, right? And so in that, you can easily drift. My heart for us is, who are we when no one is looking? Are we waging war on the private things? Because I think oftentimes what could get in the way of the fullness of what God may have for us and the life we end up living is our inability to chisel those sins that we deal with in private. It might be a little bit of self-indulgence here. It might be a little bit of porn here. It might be a little bit of lying here. It might be a little bit of cheating on your taxes here. A little bit of, oh, you know, they'll never know because I claimed this under the table, or I did, right? And so all these little things oftentimes could get in the way of you walking in a different fullness, right? And because you can't handle it. I can't handle it. We may not be in places to handle the things that we may want to do. And so I would just say, lust of the eyes, lust of the flesh, pride of life is pervasive. It's a virus, and it gets people from the inside out. And so this to me is just an amplification of humanity. Most people, given the access, would probably be doing some stuff. Now, what I'm not saying is they would be out here trying to, right, be with kids and all that crazy stuff. But a lot of folks, there's way more folks like this walking around here than you would imagine. Way more folks walking around here than you would imagine. I've seen people who just started dabbling in a little bit of casual pornography, and then that escalates to webcam models, and then that escalates to trans porn, and then that escalates to right? Like I know people that's happened to. Just the escalation of things can happen very quickly. So you think that could happen to people that have no, or so they thought, no predispositions to that. You don't think this could happen to someone that goes from having nothing to being uber popular and successful? We see, according to the Bible, that prayer is extremely important in terms of us being transformed from the inside out when we get aligned with God's will. For the Christians watching this channel, I want you guys to implement these spiritual disciplines in your day-to-day life. And the only way I've been able to do this consistently is through writing down my prayers in a prayer journal that does a few things. One, it allows me to reflect and come to God humbly and ask him to move on my behalf. And two, it allows me to document my prayers, which ultimately help me remember the very things that I was praying for and see the hand of God tangibly in my life when he answers them. So I would urge you, consider writing down your prayers. It could be in a blank notebook. It could even be on your phone. Or you could check out the one I personally designed and used from my own quiet time and spiritual discipline that I think will be a huge blessing. It's the exact structure and system that I've used for years to pray and be more consistent in my spiritual disciplines. You can pick yours up today by clicking the link in the pinned comment below. All right, I'll see you over there. Peace.